So thank you all very much for being here with us today. And today we have Dr. Brent Garza, who is a clinical assistant professor in the James Benjamin Department of Accounting at Mays Business School. He earned his PhD in accounting from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 2017. Dr. Garza's teaching and research focus on financial statement auditing, utilizing both contextual and abstract experimental methods. He has been a faculty member at Texas A&M since August 2017, initially serving as an assistant professor before transitioning to this current role in June 2024. So, Dr. Garza, thank you very much for being here with us. So, we are ready when you are.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Yes. Thank you for allowing me to present this. I hope there's some interest in kind of how I've used the AI in my class. Although I guess we have, unless it's frowned upon, I'm certainly open to just having more of a discussion since we have a little bit smaller group. But if we want to full present and then have everything at the all questions afterwards, we certainly can. But I'd be willing to have it open if you want to jump in with any sort of questions. I think that could be, let me know if you want me to take a slightly different direction. But yes, thank you. So we're presenting as part of the first group of the AI learning community that Jamie Thompson was leading. And so this is kind of the outgrowth of that. And so I guess the way I'm going to structure this discussion is I'm going to just kind of show a little bit of the evolution of how I started thinking about using AI. Is my screen sharing right now? Okay, you can see it. Okay, excellent. How I started using AI, and then how it kind of grew from there. So I labeled mine, GPTAs, right? Developing and deploying custom GPTs to enhance student learning and grading. Okay. So after a couple of iterations of trying to think about what I was doing, the key thing that I ultimately gathered some data on, I ran, was what I call this GPT, the financial statement auditing GPTA. I'm going to call this kind of a basic custom GPT. All right. And these GPTs, if you haven't heard of them, so they have them available on, if you have Chat GPT, you can kind of create your own custom GPT. So basically you can, and I use this term very loosely, program what you want it to do behind it. You're just giving it instructions in the background, just like you would prompting. Now, once you work with it a little bit, you can structure structure the instructions a bit more in different ways to make sure that it follows what you want to do. But I instructed it or programmed it to do a certain task, and then I had my students interact with this. I'll give you a little bit of, like I said, I'll give you a little bit of background of how I kind of came to this, and then I'll expand upon where I went from here. So this is what I gave my students. So they were required to do this after every class. So this is a financial statement interactive GPT to begin ask a question about a topic that was confusing from the most recent class. And where this came from was before this last semester when I used this, I had always handed out a note card at the beginning of the class, and everybody would pick up a note card, and then at the end of class, I said, before you walk out, just write down one or two confusing things that you found today, and then I would come back to the office and I kind of sort through them and try and put them in groups. It seems that these were one or two things that generally people were confused about. Couldn't get to everybody's question, but I was just trying to discover what is like the main thing that was just confusing that day. And I would use that to start the next class, the next day, lead into it. So it was a nice clarification of what was confusing and maybe lead into the next day. Sometimes I got good questions. Sometimes people were, tired at the end of class. I'm sure as I would, and I would get some things like, have a great weekend, or I'm glad we both hate corporate tax, so don't tell my tax colleagues that I tell my students that. But right, so sometimes, but I would also get some good ones. All right. Nonetheless, once it kind of came to the generative AI learning community, uh, we were trying to figure out how to apply AI. And I thought this could be a very useful way to apply it, but it was unclear. Just like, okay, so just ask the AI a question, ask ChatGPT a question. I thought that was a little broad. So what I ended up doing was I kind of developed this. I went from just let me figure out what a couple of odd things are and broadly describe them when I start the next class to clarify them. Say, what could I add to this? And so I ended up developing a GP that started with that seed of an idea and grew from there. And so there are 4 parts that I have in the GPT that I developed. Again, this thing that I program to follow. So the first thing, ask an initial question. So students would begin by asking some sort of preliminary question about the assignment topic, or a lot of times I always have it as what is in that class, what is something confusing from that day in class. Okay. And then it would give a response. Okay. So it'd say, hey, here's your response. Here's how to clarify it. But I don't want them to stop there. Now we have this very powerful tool, and they can actually ask things that are very specific to them. Right. And so then the next set, you have to, each question after the first response, you have to ask a clarifying question. Okay, so then you say, all right, here's this response. And to make sure that they were kind of looking through it, then you have to ask a clarifying question. Then it gives you a response to that. And you're required to ask a second clarifying question. So you're starting out with the key thing that was confusing you that day, and then getting an explanation, and then digging into that a couple of times. All right, so making sure that you're working with it, understanding it, digesting it, asking it back. Then I pulling from a book, or one of these ideas, I had it say, now you student who have been asking me the bot questions, I want you to explain it to me as if I'm the student, right? And so we have that ability. So I programmed the bot to say, hey, I'm just a student, I need an explanation of this, can you explain to me this following topic that we were just discussing, right? And we've seen some of this before. So this is, I guess, I pulled it from Small Teaching, but it's basically think, pair, share, right? And we've kind of heard that before. You let students pair up, give them something, and they're supposed to explain to each other. And the whole idea behind that is that it's not until you can kind of explain something that you understand it. And I think we all, as professors, fully agree with that, right? The problem there is, though, it's not always clear to me that the other student that you're explaining to fully understands. They kind of might nod along, or might even say, well, that was a little confusing. I think that's right, right? But this bot can do that. So I told it to at dumb, but hey, if something is wrong, correct the student. Say, all right, here's where here, try again. Actually, I think you were a little off in this area. And so then it would guide the student and say, all right, re-explain this part of it until it got a reasonably good explanation that said, okay, I think you understand this, right? And so then I ended it off with, now that we've discussed this topic, this is a topic that confused you, this is the one you clarified, it's going to give you 2 CPA style questions. Okay. And these are multiple choice type questions. My exams have a lot of these pulled from the CPA exams, prior CPA exam stuff, what CPA questions they have. So the bot develops 2 questions to ask them. So I'm hoping that after they've gone through it, they have a good understanding of this topic that was confusing them from before. And I required them, just like I had them turn in that card every day, I require them to do this every day. I give them, like 24 hours to go back. And this is also a way to force them then to interact with the material instead of waiting till the next day. They have to, by the following day, they have to at least think a little bit about it again, work with it, come back to it. And so, if you haven't worked with these, I'm just going to quickly show you kind of what this entails. So these GPTs, the normal Chat GPT interface that you have, you can explore these GPTs. These are just little fancy bots to kind of create, and then you create yours. And what you have when you do that, it gives you this screen that allows you to determine, kind of name it, tell it what it generally does, and here's where I quote unquote programmed it to do what I want. So I gave it specific instructions. Here's the steps that I want you to do. Please act as a student that needs explaining. Please correct the student. I give it some additional things. You can put make sure that they're not just copying and pasting the explanation that you already gave to them. So the bot checks itself to make sure that the explanations that they're providing are adding, showing something different than just copying and pasting what they've done before, right? Um, as part of the learning community that Jamie led, we were also supposed to gather some data, see how this worked, and I'll say it was a little bit of a mixed bag. Okay, so here are all the questions that I ultimately had, and I kind of grouped them. Had AI help me develop it based upon some previous surveys. I fed it some previous surveys, said, here are some general surveys, here's some categories you seem to help me develop it specifically for these bots, for this bot that I want to get a survey on. And okay, 5 was the highest. So it was a little, there were some things that they liked more than others. See, I have some ideas about what I can change, but I did want to pull out a few key ones that I still thought were pretty good, that I liked a lot. And one of them was that having this interaction each time with the GPT, they said it strengthened their critical thinking overall, about a 4 out of 5. So they had to kind of sit there and think more about it, get some feedback, explain it to it, blah, blah. And it improved their understanding of complex topics. That's awesome, right? That's what we're trying to do. I'm trying to give them the base understanding in class. I'm sure that it doesn't all make sense. And here's another tool that can help them understand it. A key part of something that I think we're all wanting our students to advance is understanding how to work with AI, right? And so the students seemed very happy about, hey, this was a really cool way for me to start getting comfortable with AI. And it's interesting. Let me give a little background on my students. My students is an intro. My class is Introduction to Auditing. They actually take it as juniors or seniors usually. And this is an interesting group because they started out college without, AI, and they're ending college where AI is super important. And I think they're a little concerned about, well, I don't know if I want to use it. What is that cheating, right? I think that's probably going to change once we get the newer group of individuals who just deal with AI a lot more. But I think this group that started and ended in kind of 2 different paradigms here is they like the opportunity. So at least the next couple of years, they'll like the opportunity to collaborate and learn how to use AI. And something else that I loved here, cut off a little bit, reinforce their professional judgment. So what do I mean by that? I was basically asking them, did it help you evaluate whether or not answers were good or not? Now, this was stuff that they were confused about. So they're not entirely sure whether or not the answer is right or wrong. But I tell them, if anything seems to be conflicting with what you're getting from this AI assistant, with what we're saying in class, either one of us is wrong, the AI, or maybe me, or it needs to be explained a little differently. So they said that they gave a high marks on evaluating the output from this AI. And I think that is, along with learning how to collaborate, that AI is a super important skill that we all want our students to do. We know that it's very easy to get an answer. So now the part is evaluating the output. We can get output really easily and really quickly now. Is it good output? And that's what we really need our students to think about. So that is the basic AI that I did, the basic GPT that I did. And I'll put a couple little items here. This is really for if you have a paid version of GPT, the professor would need a paid version of ChatGPT to allow the students to access this, and that also puts some prompt limits, but that I put into the instructions. So that was something after the first day or week that we used it, I changed the instructions once we found out there was some limits. And I put in the instructions to start immediately, give a message count, and move quickly to each next step, so that they really have 4 parts and they can get all 4 parts done within 10 prompts, basically. So I was able to program the GPT to make sure that it counts the messages and keeps track of it for the students, and then also gets the part that they need done within those 10 prompts. They get to reset their 10 prompts every like 12 or 24 hours or something like that. However, depending on, especially if you're in the business school, there are some other departments that may be using this as well, but we actually have access to Boodlebox. And so that is another tool that uses Chat GPT or actually several other AI tools under it, depending on what you choose. And at least for the business school, we're very lucky that we have access to as professors. And as long as students have a free account, they can interact with it as many messages as they need. So, maybe that's something worth looking at. So I have a couple of these. I would certainly be willing to share the links if you would like to play around with these. Simply let me know. But that's the basic. That is the basic GPT that I did. All right. But this gets some ideas rolling. Okay, so that was what I started with. And then I started thinking about some more, and I'm going to call these basic custom GPTs that I built on top of it. So once I did that financial statement auditing GPT, the one I just showed you, it gave all of this information, right? It asked students what was the main confusion you had, what were the 2 clarifying questions that you have, explain this back. And so I was like, wait a second, I have them submit. There's a way that they can submit their chat to me each day so that I can make sure they're actually doing it. That's how they get credit for it. All right, so then I have access to their chat. Well, using ChatGPT, I could actually copy and paste their chat or even their underlying HTML. If you just know how to quickly grab that web page and just have all that messy HTML in there, well, then I just fed that whole thing as a text file into ChatGPT, and I said, can you extract for me this main question that the student asked? And then it would generally know what to look for and say, oh, here's the main question that this student asked. I say, great. I do it for the next student. And then I could do that for each of the students, or I could ask for the 2 clarifying questions that it asked. So I was like, wait a second, ChatGPT can actually help me analyze the interactions that the students were having with ChatGPT, right? So now I'm kind of building on itself here. All right, so that was something. And then I could aggregate the total number of or the total questions that were asked, and still, like I used to do, say, I just want to, now that even though the students have already answered their questions, I just wanted to see generally what was giving them issues, and I can do that. And I'm not going to say I could quickly do that, but I'm going to come to that in a second. All right. Once I did that, so another thing that I did with the custom GPT was help me refine my questions on my actual exam. I was able to kind of say, here are the questions I have. Please group the questions by similar topics so I could see, am I asking too many of one? Once you start putting these exams together, I think we've all had that. You got lots of different questions, you're pulling from different sources and things like that. And you're like, okay, these are good questions. And you don't realize like kind of some of them start to repeat themselves a little bit. It even pointed out one that I repeated the question itself. So that was, this is the same question that you use. I was like, oh, okay, well, I need to replace one of these, obviously. And so help me refine it. Also help me, I try not to change my questions too much because they're from the CPA exam and I want my students to get used to it. But like, are there little ways that there's something confusing in the question? The CPA exam has super confusing questions, the way they word it. And I get why they're so specific in their wording so that they are asking exactly what they want to be asking. But that does cause some confusion. So I did also help it say, all right, could you just kind of go through, and is there some way to make it just a little bit clearer on each of these? So just make it so that I'm not testing their ability to decode some weird thing, but their actual knowledge on what I want, right? So those are some of the custom GPTs that I put together, doing the same thing I showed you a minute ago where I had that screen and it allowed me to program behind it. All right. So keep on going, or again, I'm open to if you'd like to ask any questions about what I have done so far. But okay, if not, but Brent, you said the title of your talk here was developing and deploying custom GPTs to enhance student learning and grading, right? So where is the grading portion? That sounds like that might help me, professor, more. I agree. Right. Okay. So something that I'm still on my basic GPTs right now that I did was I put together an essay grader. So I teach the audit class, the introduction to audit class, again, by juniors and seniors, is one of the W classes. So we have the writing requirements. They have to have so much writing, you know, each semester. And part of it that we have 1 page assignments, and then we have an essay. So they have an essay that's 3 to 4 pages long, and they also have to have like a executive summary on the front of it of 1 page. Okay, so we got to grade that. I don't know how many of you are in, teach W classes. It is, to say the least, tough to grade students' writing. It's not great. Hey, mine wasn't, I'm sure, either when I was in their shoes. I still have to work on mine. All right. But what this was allowed me to do is that I said, okay, I want to create a bot again using all those instructions like I showed you, program those instructions in the back, and I want to have it help me grade these assignments, grade these essays that they have, specifically for the essays right now. I was able to do that. And I'm going to give a little bit more background here shortly, but I will say that it reduces grading time and drastically, and I mean drastically, enhances the feedback that I can give and the consistency which I can give those feedback. All right. I'm not going to say that the AI was 100%. I'm not going to say that by essay 32 out of 84, I'm at 100%, right? It gets very difficult to kind of, if you've been grading these, you can only do a few at a time, then your brain has to kind of clear itself out and you have to go back at it. All right. So I gave my students a rubric. This is a rubric I had for years now, and it has I think this is 13 criteria total. And so, originality, do they have a good topic paragraph, topic sentences, conciseness, do they answer all the questions required? And to grade each of these essays on a good clip, it would be about 15 to 20 minutes per essay. And again, these are just 3 to 4 page essays. And this is all that this is all I was able to do before. And I would just have it up, and I would have markings of some sort that would say, hey, if I highlight in yellow, it means this. If I bold something, it means this. And then if I have a little time, and I didn't do this for all of them, but like if I think the student needs a little bit more clarification, I'll give it, a couple of comments off to the side. But again, now that's costing me another 5 minutes. So we're talking 20 to 25 minutes an essay, right? So, all right. And you got to get through, I've had as little as 75 one semester to as many as 100. And so, that's 20 times 100 to 25 times 100. All right. When I use the GPT, I gave it detailed instructions about what I'm looking for, the same things that I tell my students what I'm looking for. And I gave it detailed instructions, and it gave me this as feedback. And this was reduced. I had to reduce it. So what this is this is about half a page to 3/4 of a page per criterion. So they are getting about 6 to 8 pages worth of specific feedback. I also told it, I want you to evaluate each and every topic sentence. So I think this one here in the middle is each topic sentence is extracted from the essay, and then it evaluates it. And I have some criteria that I look for a good topic sentences, and it grades each topic sentence on a scale of 1 to 5 for every single topic sentence. Then it also goes through and grades, conciseness. Did it have a good opening paragraph or topic paragraph? Why or why not? Here's some suggestions for improvement. And I even had to tell it, don't give the student all of the answers. I don't want them to have, I just want you to give them some issues that they need to work on, and then tell them they need to look for it and revise the essay and do that. So this was significantly, right? And it now took, because I had to feed each essay one by one, and I had to feed the instructions to it. So it's much more advanced essay, but I had to guide it every step. Now it didn't take as much, so it took about I'd say 7 to 10 minutes per essay, because I had to feed it each of the essays along with the very detailed instructions that I gave it. Load those instructions in GPT, copy and paste instructions. So I actually put together some text files of the instructions that I would have to give it. So I'd have to give this one by one. Turns out you need to be very careful when you guide this. You have to guide it at each and every step. So copy and paste every time you ask it to grade any criterion, even though this stuff was in its back knowledge, it wasn't always pulling from it unless I specifically gave it to it. Okay. So, hey, 20 to 25 minutes versus 7 to 10 minutes an essay, I'm getting pretty happy at this point. But, there's more, right? I'll give you 2 Cutco knives for half the price. All right. Oh, something that I did last night while I was kind of putting this together is I was like, Notebook LM, if you've used Notebook LM, I wanted to you can throw any sort of sources in there and then it'll develop a podcast of 2 people sounding like they're talking to each other on a podcast. And I did that. And you know what? I think I'm going to give that to the students. So these text files are all the instructions that I would give to ChatGPT. I don't want to give my students all the I give them the instructions in class, but I don't want to give them the secret sauce because then all they would do is just plug these in and try and throw it at it. Well, I don't want them to do that. But this podcast took all of these and gave it about a 15-20 minute podcast where they're discussing each and every one of these items in a pretty engaging manner. I think I'm going to give my students access to that podcast and say, listen to this. These are the kind of things I'm looking for. This is what makes a good topic paragraph. This is what makes a good topic sentence, blah, blah, blah. Right. So I was really happy with that. Again, more than happy to share what that sounded like if you'd like. But again, there's more. Can we make this even more efficient? So then I was getting really excited. I was really happy with how well the GPT was doing on that financial statement auditing GPT, where they would ask questions, and then 2, this one where it was grading the essays. But again, 7 to 10 minutes is still quite a bit of time. All right. As I played more and more with this AI, GPT is the main one I'm using, I've kind of realized that the way I'm starting to see it now is that you can kind of break down tasks into 2 key parts, the unstructured part and the structured part. I.e., what do I mean by that? I mean, the structured part is that I need each and every one of those criterion, those 13 criterion, for example, in my essay graded. I have to do that for each one. I can't just say, AI, grade this essay, and it decides to grade topic sentences on this one and a topic paragraph on that one and conciseness on. No. I have told my students the things I'm looking for. I grade it in a certain way. I want them writing in a certain way. I've given them an instruction. So I need it to do that. All right. But the unstructured part of the task is seeing how it all fits together, right? That's why we have to, as the professors, have to go through the essays and look at it and say, okay, the conciseness is not really here, but yes, I think it is an original idea. Its paragraphs are not really that well organized, but if they would rearrange it, I think it could. And that's what takes this mental capacity so much, because it's so unstructured. We have to check all of these specific criteria, but they could be all over the place in the essay. Some of them missing completely, some of them needing more work than others, some of them really good, right? And I said, can AI help me with that? And I think it can. And the way I ended up doing this was I was thinking, let's combine AI with Python. Python can handle programming. I use Python myself, and I'm going to come to this in a second. Python is the programming language I use to say, I want to tell you to do each of these specific steps. I want you to grade each of these criteria in the essay, and I want you to grade it by these standards that I put together, those instructions that I put together. Okay. But that part over here that unstructured part was not something we really had access to. That was only in our brains. But this AI stuff, as long as it's well instructed, can start to see these. Okay, this student doesn't have very good conciseness, but they do have what seems like an original argument. Yes, it does seem that based upon the questions that need to be answered somewhere in the essay, they have answered them, even if their overall organization could be improved. Do they have some key concepts well designed, right? This thing that could have been like all over the place. I can't just tell Python to find each of these because it could be all over the place. So that's where I had to use my knowledge before, and AI, or artificial intelligence, can kind of help decipher it on that. Well, now that we have something that can help us with the unstructured part of the task, and we already had something that can help us with the structured part of the task. Let's put these two together and see if we can't handle this task all together. All right. Couple of quotes that I think emphasize this are two that I've heard. One, I don't know where it came from, but I've heard it. The programming language of the future is English. And what that means is that I don't really have Python programming skills. I dabble, a friend of mine showed me and I dabbled in it a little bit. And so I have an idea of kind of how things work. I've done my PhD. I work with some stats programs that require so I have some idea of how a program is generally supposed to work, but I don't really have the programming skills to do this. And I especially don't have the programming skills to extract an essay and grade it and give me feedback. But I don't need that anymore. I just need to be able to ask ChatGPT to help me develop the program to do that. The other one is, the other quote that I like a lot is, instructors make great prompt engineers. So these are where those instructions come in, right? And so what he meant by that is that we as instructors like to explain things a lot, maybe over explain things sometimes, right? Maybe. And so we are actually probably pretty well placed to make good instructions to guide the AI that we need. All right. So if I can give the guidance for this unstructured part of the task, and I can get Python to make sure it runs each and every one of the structured part of the task, I think we've kind of solved this problem a little bit. All right. And this starts to build on itself because AI plus Python is kind of this iterative multiplicative process. AI was helping me generate the Python code to automate the structured parts of my task. And then Python uses those code to prompt AI to analyze the unstructured part. Basically, Python made sure to do each and every criteria, and then it would send, when it can't grade the essay, but it can send a prompt to AI to grade that part of the essay. And it can send the instructions, it can send the essay, all of the above, right? And so I think this is a good part to, you kind of hear where the human in the loop is. So wait a second. So does this mean that are we completely useless as professors? And the answer I would say is absolutely not. I think this just enhances where we're coming from. Again, I think it's interactive and multiplicative. Where is the human in the loop? Well, a lot of times what we're doing with our students is we're showing them, hey, you can ask AI a question, then you need to evaluate the response and you need to ask it again, right? So we're kind of putting them in the middle of the loop. With these custom GPTs and this added on Python to help automate the process, where we come in is the instructions that we do, right? Like I said, our Ethan Mollick said, we make good prompt engineers because we like to explain things. And so I want to show you what some of these look like. For my first GPT, that very basic GPT that I had them work with, where they would ask questions, there are, this is, I worked with GPT to help me, establish the questions as well, do things I want. It's about 4 pages long, right? And those are the instructions that I put in the background of that GPT, all right? I knew what I wanted to do. I knew some examples that I could give it to help guide the GPT on how I wanted to respond, right? So there's where my knowledge comes in. And now students can use that to ask individual questions, all right? So this, instead of having the human in the middle of the loop, because I can't go in and see each and every one of their responses that they receive, some of that is their responsibility to evaluate now, but I can give some guidance at the very beginning of the process. So maybe the human in the loop is at the very start of the process. That's where professors can come in. Same is very much true for grading the essays. And so I also, as an example, put together the instructions. I put all of those 10 text files that I showed you. I put all of those together in one file. And there is 53 pages worth of GPT instructions that they're not fed in all at once. It's fed in individually. Okay. But these is basically not me writing it all by hand using ChatGPT to help me, right? But here are the ways I explain writing to my class. Here are the things that I'm looking for when I grade the writing. And so I explained that to ChatGPT. It helped me develop directions. And then these are the instructions that are fed into ChatGPT each time I have it graded. So again, this is really me putting a lot of my human in the loop at the beginning. And then once it gives me the output, of course, I want to go through and look and make sure it makes sense. But I'm not really muddling here in the middle where students might be playing around with it. So we as professors have the knowledge to guide it from the beginning and then double check it here at the end, right? And students are probably working more here in the middle and some here at the end. Okay, with that, I want to say I want to show you how I used AI to enhance each of my basic GPTs. So that for that first one where the students were asking the questions, what I am working on now, and this is something I'm going to implement next semester, hopefully, is that I record my lectures. I just put it on. I just put Zoom on and record my lectures. If you've ever worked with transcripts that come out of Zoom, they're pretty messy. And I have asked ChatGPT, I've just given it the text file and said, could you help me correct this? And it only wants to give maybe a 2-page summary of it. It just doesn't want to go and correct it. Okay, well, AI though, Python, again, I'm not a coder. I asked Python to help me do this. I said, here's this text file. I need to correct these transcripts. I need Python code to send it to AI and correct it. And so the code takes chunks of it at a time, sends it to AI, corrects it, brings it back, compiles it, and it iterates that 3 or 4 times so that it says, okay, here is a corrected transcript. Now, no, it is not 100% correct. But the point of this is that what I can now do is for that GPT where my class is using it to ask questions, it now has the specific items that I talked about. Maybe it's 80% correct now in the transcript, but that's okay. I'm going to put that in the background of the GPT as another file. And I'm going to say, refer to these files if you're not sure what the student is asking, because sometimes I use my own language or sometimes I talk about it a little differently. And if the GPT now with this corrected transcript under it, 80% corrected transcript under it, can draw from the knowledge of specifically how I discuss things in class, right? And so that's, and then at 5 minutes to, 5 minutes to finish the thing. And so, perfect, I'm almost done here. So we can, are there any questions then, actually, before we finish up? Nobody's kind of jumped in questions? All right, there are a couple more. What I want to say as well about those financial statement auditing GPT where I had to ask questions. Remember when I asked it, please can you extract each person's individual question? Well, that required me to go to each file one by one, drop it into ChatGPT, and then ask it to take each question one by one. All right. But with AI, I was able to say, here is the file of questions here's the HTML files that I downloaded from Canvas. I want you to go through and I want you to send each of these to Canvas or to AI, extract the question, and then bring it back to me as some sort of summarized file. So I just gave it the file and it did all of the hard work of extracting what I needed, and I was able to see what questions they would ask. So I automated that process of aggregating. For the exam question refinement, I was able to say, here's the exam that I have. Here's an exam that I have. So here, could you create 4 different versions of the exam? And it did it. It said, all right, it's going to rearrange it. There's still this is a newer one that I'm working on. There's still a couple of kinks I need to work out, but it basically took the questions that I had and then rearranged the answers so that I could have different versions, and then gave me the summary sheet of the answers so that I could produce it later. So that's a quick way for me to create 4 versions of my exam after I've spent the time refining it. Me spending time reorganizing my answers is a waste of time. Me making sure that I'm asking good questions, that's a good use of my time, right? And then finally here, I have the automated essay grader, and this is almost perfect timing. So you would like to see example. Perfect, because I would like to show you. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't showing you my screen. I've still been on the instructions. I apologize. I have my presentation up here. But here is my essay grader. Again, I'm not a coder, but I know what I was looking for. I was able to work with it. I know some basic ideas about coding. And so with the help of GPT, I was able to put together this program that sends each and every file to ChatGPT and examines it one by one based on the criterion that I wanted to ask for. So it knows to draw from each of these text files to ask for it. And this is a little, this is a little trick I did last time. Just for funsies, I went ahead and started this right before we started this session, and I have now graded, while we were talking, about about 25 essays have been graded during the time that we have been chatting with each other here. So I feel, it's pretty good. There's still some kinks to work out, but I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think that brings us right up to time. I don't know if there are any other questions that I could ask. I can certainly stay on for a couple more minutes.